Okay. Segment and angle bisectors. Now, first of all, this midpoint and distance kind of go together. Remember, distance is x minus x squared plus y minus y squared and then square rooted. So the midpoint is the point that's in between the two endpoints.
So,
right? To find a midpoint, for example, if we had this point at left 2 and up 3, and this point at 3 over 1 up. You connect them, it forms a segment. The midpoint is going to be right in here somewhere, right? The middle of it. So the way you find that, it's a point. Sometimes people get these two confused, distance and midpoint. Midpoint is a coordinate. Distance is a value. It's a length. And the way you find the midpoint is it's the average of the x's and the average of the y's. So again, when you see this formula, they're going to have like an x2 plus an x1. All that means is add the two different x's and a y2 plus a y1. So to find the midpoint of this, it's just the average of the x's, negative 2 plus 3, divided by 2, which is 1/2, or 0.5. You can have decimal or fraction. And then the average of the y's, 3 plus 1, divided by 2, which is 4. So the midpoint is 1/2 over 4 up. Well, that's 3. That's 2. Sorry, 1/2 over 2 up. So the midpoint is a lot easier to do than the distance formula.
Because you don't got to square it.
Right. Yeah. It's easy to do in your head. Add up the x's divided by 2. Add up the y's divided by 2.
No ways.
Bisect. Anyone know what it means to bisect something?
Cut it into 2.
Cut in half. Okay? If something's bisected, it's cut in half. So this segment that I did up here, the midpoint bisects it. It cuts it into 2 equal halves. All right? Okay? If they told you to bisect an angle, what does that mean to do to the angle?
Just split it up in the middle.
Cut it in half. So if you've got an angle like this, and they say bisect it, that means you would cut it into 2 equal angles. Okay? If a segment is bisected, what they do is they'll show you by putting a mark there and a mark there. Remember, whenever you see like one mark and one mark, that means they're equal lengths. You guys remember that?
Yeah. And if you see the triangle, then they're like
equilateral triangles.
Yep,
Yeah.
equilateral triangle would have a mark on all of them. And in angles, to show that they're angled, they just put a little arc. We better have everyone just turn their iPads over. That thing must not be working. Just flip them over. Okay, constructions. We're going to do constructions on Friday. We're going to start. There's, I think it's 13 or 15 constructions we do throughout the year, or in the book. We only have to do, it's either 9 or 11 of them. So when we do the constructions Friday, you're going to want to put them somewhere where you can add to them throughout the year. And then at the end of the year, when we're done with them, we hand them all in. Okay? So that's what we'll do Friday. Constructions are used with the rulers and the compasses. Okay? So what we will be doing is bisecting segments and bisecting angles on Friday. Okay, midpoint, again, it's simple to find the midpoint of a segment. It's somewhere right about in here, halfway. So you add the x's and divide by 2. 5 plus negative 3 is 2, divided by 2 is 1. And then add the y's and divide by 2. 5 plus negative 4 is 1, divided by 2 is 1/2. So at 1 over, half up is the midpoint. Now, here's the little tougher ones.
Oh boy.
These take a little bit of algebra. The difference here now is they give us this endpoint, they give you the midpoint, and they're looking for the other endpoint.
Ah,
That's dumb.
Now,
impossible.
as long as you remember the midpoint formula, in order to find this 1, we took this x plus that x and divided by 2, right? So if you write this equation down, they're solved the same exactly every single time. You just take the x plus the x, negative 3 plus x, divided by 2, because that's the midpoint formula, turned out to equal what? 1. And then to find the y, it was the y plus the y, 2 plus y divided by 2 turned out to equal 4. So once you write them down, they're always solved the same way. First you get rid of the 2 on the bottom, so you take it times 2, times 2. So you're left with negative 3 plus x equals 1 times 2 is 2. Here it's 2 plus y equals 8. And then you just add 3 to get the x by itself. X equals 5. And subtract 2. Y equals 6. So the endpoint is 5 over 6 up. And you can double check it just quickly. 5 plus negative 3 is 2, divided by 2 is 1. 6 plus 2 is 8, divided by 2 is 4. So if you write these equations out each time, it's just a 2-step equation. You always multiply by 2, and then add or subtract to get rid of that number. So again, here's one like that. They give you the endpoint, they give you the midpoint, they're looking for the other endpoint. So you would go negative 5 plus x divided by 2 turned out to equal 5. And then you solve it. Take it times 2. And then add 5. So x is 15. So it's 15 over. Then you do the same thing with the y's. 12 plus y
Is that right, Tom?
divided by 2 turned out to equal 3. So multiply by 2 and subtract 12, and you get y equals negative 6. So the endpoint is 15 over 6 down. Okay? Those are the most confusing ones so far that we've done yet this year. Okay. Now these, when you're doing problems, you're going to want to spot. It tells us ray EG is an angle bisector. So what does angle bisector means?
It means that
Cut.
it did cut in half.
In
that
half.
means they're both.
So they're the same, yeah. Find the two angle measures not given. They make these more complicated than they have to.
Oh.
So we know this is 52.
Yeah.
So this is 52. What's the other angle measure?
The
DEF.
Yeah.
The whole thing,
Thing is 110. This
104.
Yeah.
Now, this is something that it does throughout the whole book. So everyone look at this so you don't ever get these wrong.
Alright.
It looks the way they drew it that this angle is 64 because the 64 is in between the two lines, but it's not. I don't know why they do that.
Oh, so the whole thing is 64.
The whole, see they put this line in here? So that means the whole thing is 64.
So-
And they do that in every picture throughout the whole book. So you gotta recognize if there's a whole line there, that means the whole thing is
So it looks
64.
like 64 then.
Yeah, right, that doesn't look like 64, but. So the two angles we don't know are each half, 32 and 32.
So you gotta use
Now we got algebra. It says that ray KM bisects angle JKL, which means this is cut in half. So since it's cut in half, what do you know about this and that?
Equal.
They're equal. And the nice thing about geometry is there's only two types of equations that you really ever use. You're either gonna set things equal to each other, or they're gonna add up to equal something like 90 degrees or 180 degrees. So in this case, it's 2x plus 7 has to equal 4x minus 41. And then you gotta solve it. So remember, if the x's are on the opposite sides, you get them together. It doesn't matter which one you move. If I move this over, what happens to it?
Negative.
Minus 2x. So since, drop the equal sign down. Since I got the x's on the right, get the non-x's on the left. So to get rid of the negative 41, you add 41. And then your last step, divide by 2. So x is 24. Now again, I'll point this out every assignment. Sometimes they say solve for x. So if that's the case, you're done. Sometimes they tell you to find the actual measures. So what you gotta do then
Like, put like
is put,
4 for that.
right, put 24 in there. 2 times 24 is 48, plus 7 is 52 degrees. That's angle JKM. And what's MKL gonna be?
52.
The same thing. Most of the time, in the assignments, they just tell you to find x. Every once in a while, they throw it in like this just to see if you're reading the whole thing. So again, here, BD is the bisector, which means this angle equals that angle. 3x has to be the same as x plus 20. So, get this x over to the other side. When you move something over, it changes signs. So from positive to negative x, that makes 2x. And then divide by 2, x is 10. Which means this angle is 30, and so is the other one. Same thing here, this is the bisector, which means 6x plus 15 has to equal 10x minus 25. Combine the x's, they're on opposite sides, so move one of them. If I move this one over here, it changes from plus to minus. Drop the equal sign down, which means you get the non-x's to the other side. It's minus, so you add. Then divide by 4, and you get 10 equals x. Which means 6 times 10 is 60, plus 5 is 75, which means the other one's got to be 75 also. Okay?